Hello everyone. Welcome to Digital Marketing Gyan, the podcast where we keep on sharing some of the informative tools, techniques, case studies, and latest updates in digital marketing domain. I'm your host Prince Kumar, and today our guest is a well-known personality in the influencer marketing industry. We have Gordon Glenister with us. He is the global head of influencer marketing at the Branded Content Marketing Association and author of Influencer Marketing Strategy. He hosts his own podcast called Influence the Global Podcast, shining a spotlight on the influencer marketing industry. Gordon is also the founder of Membership Word and has recently co-authored the Social CEO Report into the social impact of membership CEOs. Hi Gordon, welcome to our show.
Hello, lovely to see you.
So Gordon, can you just share about your corporate journey so far?
Well, how long have you got? So just to give you a little bit of some context, particularly as we're talking about influencer marketing. So I used to be the director general of the Promotional Merchandise Association, and in 2018, I set up my own membership consultancy. Because I wanted to help other membership association leaders with their strategy. But of course, when you start a new business, you never really know in which direction it's going to go. And not long after that, setting the business up, I met with an old friend of mine, Andrew Cantor, who runs the Branded Content Marketing Association. And we were in a London hotel. And I just said to him, there's this massive growth in influencers at the moment, right around the world, and agencies, but there is still this Wild West image that seems to be popping up, and the mainstream media haven't always been supportive of it. And yet, this is an industry that's expanding hugely. Who's representing these people? So we realized that at the time, there was no representative trade organization. And so we decided to create a new division of the Branded Content Marketing Association for influence, to represent influence agencies and platforms and individuals. And we launched that in 2019. But not long after that, of course, I came to one of the big marketing shows in London, and I noticed one of the publishers, the business book publishers. And I said to the lady behind the desk there, booth, I said, have you got a book at all on influencer marketing? And she said, well, not really. We have books on social media. So I thought, maybe there's an opportunity here to create a book. And not only was it important for me to write a book, I felt, almost to educate myself, but more importantly, I thought I was in this pivotal position where I could interview lots of other influencers, thought leaders, agencies. So I was very fortunate to get a global publishing contract. And the book was finally published in March 2021, so fairly recently. And I've had fantastic responses from it, more than I ever thought I would. And I think the reason why, as I said, because I've been able to interview lots of other people, I've been able to give almost an A to Z of what to do and how to do it. I've put a number of case studies in there, glossary of terms, all that sort of thing. However, I would say, though, that last year in the pandemic, the advertising industry took a real nosedive, as I'm sure you and your listeners will know.
Definitely. I think so you are doing great work in the field of influencer marketing and you are leading by example. I think so that is the great thing that we all can learn from you. Okay, can you just please help us understand what actually is influencer marketing and how you compare it with other digital marketing tactics that we have?
Yeah. Okay. So influencer marketing is nothing new. It's just like emperor's new clothes. Effectively, it's word of mouth marketing. What the difference between influencer marketing is, you are using people, you're using individuals to promote a product or service. That's it in its nutshell. And what I love about influencer marketing is it creates authenticity. You're not having just adverts on billboards or or television commercials or stuff like that. It's very much about people turning up, showing up, and promoting your product in sometimes a unique way that even the brands hadn't necessarily considered or thought of. It also allows for individuals to tell stories. We remember as consumers stories more than we do facts. Influencer marketing also helps build trust for brands. Traditional advertising is at an all-time low, particularly amongst Gen Z and millennials. And some of them will just turn away from sales ads and bombarded, as I say, advertising messages. They would trust the opinions of friends, family, colleagues, and indeed influencers. So that's a really important thing. You can create trackable links when you use an influencer. So when you're running a campaign, you can actually determine how effective it is by, as I say, by having these links directly to your website. So you can attribute individually the effect of these individuals. So if you were running a campaign with 20 of them, you could have a unique code that they could give to their followers and be able to track that back. The other thing a brand can do with an influencer is have a niche marketplace. So of course, when you advertise on television or in a newspaper, it's largely mass media, isn't it? Whereas with an influencer, and let's just say, I don't know, fly fishing or something, you could find somebody that has only a few thousand followers, but everything within that niche is fly fishing. Not even just fishing, even a super niche, which means that the level of engagement from that individual is likely to be significant because of that niche. You have an opportunity to work with people from diverse backgrounds that actually replicate your own audience as is, or potentially your future audience. I know brands that have found when they were running a campaign, by working with one or two specific influencers, it has helped them create brand new markets, which is really exciting for them. You can also work with influencers in relation to developing research. What do you think about these types of products? Do you like this size, this color, or do you like these types of accessories, or that type of thing? So it's real insight. And if you're talking about stuff like YouTube, bloggers, working with bloggers, for example, you've got this sort of evergreen content that keeps generating leads and impacts for that brand. Unlike, again, if you compare it with a traditional billboard ad or a taxi ad, they've bought and sold it, and after the 6 weeks it's all over, it's come off. Yeah, well, that isn't necessarily the case with an influencer. So there's just a few of the ones that you can look at. Also, one more is community. When you're working with an influencer, a lot of them have got an engaged community, and if you can create these sort of ambassador programs, then you are more likely to really connect with your future audience through that influencer.
Definitely, rightly said. And I think so the most advantage of having an influencer marketing is, since we have audience, or we can say we have kind of celebrities who are promoting that product. So many times it happens that when brands keep on speaking, then many of the people do not trust them, or many of the people do not purchase them. But then again, if we are having around, let's say, 50 voices, or around, let's say, 100 voices who are kind of pitching your product, so definitely that makes an impact compared to other marketing strategies that we have.
Absolutely.
So, who are actually called influencers, and what are the criteria that you consider that fit for a successful influencer?
Yeah. So there are two types of influencers: a B2B, business to business, and a B2C, business to consumer. So when a lot of people think about influencer marketing, they tend to think about the social media Instagram influencer. And there's some research out there, particularly amongst social media influencers. The average age of an influencer is 28, 70% of which are women, which is amazing, isn't it? To see how much influencer marketing has embraced female entrepreneurs. So that's particularly interesting. But let's just look at the B2C, for example, which will be the buckets like travel, fashion, lifestyle, food, drink, beauty, entertainment, and gaming, some of the main ones. And I tend to break these influencers down into different categories. So the first one is what we call a nano influencer. And that's typically somebody that's got between 1 and 10,000 followers on Instagram. The second tier is what we call a micro influencer, which is between 10 and 50,000 followers. The next up from that is mid tier, which is 50 to 500,000. And then you're starting to move up into the bigger league, which is a macro influencer between 500,000 and a million. And then ultimately the celebrity type bigger influencer, which has got over 1 million followers. In fact, actually, some influencers are now more popular than traditional celebrities that you might have seen on TV because of the sheer follower base. And some of the fashion brands are now thinking, well, what we're going to do is we're going to promote our influencers on other forms of advertising, like billboards, like media, like television, all these other areas, which proves the power of these individuals. So we've seen quite a lot of that. I think the other thing that makes a successful influencer is somebody that has a really good engagement, because it's not enough nowadays to have a large number of followers. It's about, how engaging are you? What are your followers? How are they reacting to you? Are they commenting? Are they liking your content? So that's important, and it needs to be, the average on Instagram in terms of engagement is 1.67% engagement. Obviously, if you've got the smaller influencer types that I was just alluding to, they tend to have a much higher level of engagement because they're in a position to be able to go back and comment and add more value. But if you've got like 1 million followers and you've got 25,000 comments, well, as clearly you can't go back and comment on all those people. I mean, sometimes the bigger ones, of course, have teams, have media teams that support them to enable that to happen. But I do think a good influencer is responsive, is listening to their audience. I think another attribute is they know their numbers. In other words, they know what their followers and their community want. And because why wouldn't they? At the end of the day, they're interested in growing their follower base and reaching out to more brands that are going to pay them more money. So, they've got to know. They've also got to know what time of day their content works best. They need to know whether it's posts or it's videos. So they're looking at lots of A/B testing, keeping it different, keeping it fresh, keeping it relevant all of the time, watching the comments. I mean, we have certain journalists over here that are hugely influential, but not all for the right reasons. So there's an engagement and there's sentiment. So sentiment is about the positivity of those comments as opposed to just engagement. Just to add a little bit to that, Prince, is in terms of B2B influencers, that can be fairly broad, and that could be an author, that could be a speaker, that could be an academic, a technical expert. They wouldn't necessarily call them influencers, but they are all people that have influence in their own right. And they would be great people to work with regard to sort of joint collaborative research. There could be opportunities to invite them to be on a panel, online panel, to be to help you promote your conference, for example, all sorts of things.
I have a doubt, and I think so. Many of my audience will be having a similar doubt. that how one can differentiate between an ad and influencer ad, because many a time what I have seen that there are a kind of film stars and they keep on promoting a product. So for me it becomes a kind of doubtful that it's a kind of common ad that they are doing or it's a kind of influencer ad that they are planning to do that.
Right. So this is something I feel quite strongly about, and I put this in my book, a whole section on the legal impact of making sure that influencers are being transparent about whether or not they have a collaboration with a brand. So the sort of global universal hashtag is the word hashtag ad, or indeed in Instagram's area, paid partnership. So, if you were a brand wanting to work with an influencer, one of the most important things that you need to do is to do proper due diligence on that individual. And there's lots of influencer platforms, by the way, that enable you to do that. Because what you want to do is to make sure that if they are collaborating with brands, they are using the hashtag ad symbol, which should be right at the start of their post, not buried in any links or right at the bottom. It should be absolutely clear and transparent that they are being paid or indeed gifting. Now, when I say gifting without requirement to posting, i.e., if the influencer feels that it fits with their values and they want to do it, then that's fine. But if you as a brand are asking them to promote the product or service in advance of them doing it, then they have to disclose that that is either an ad or in some way gifted. So there's lots of different. I'm not sure what all the regulations are in India, but certainly the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK is a very good reference point, and there's a whole section in my book around proper advertising disclosures.
So when you say that there are kind of good influencers and that they are kind of affordable that we can reach upon, then how does brands can connect with these influencers? And then connecting with influencers is one part, but then connecting the influencers who can give the proper result is another part.
Right, so finding influencers is the biggest challenge in influencer marketing, and that is why there are influencer marketing platforms that enable that to happen quickly and easily. As if you've never done this before, I really do suggest that you try and work with an expert, because it's like trying to find your own salespeople. It's you can do everything yourself, but it can take a lot longer, and it's a bit sometimes like a hit and miss. So one of the things I suggest you do, if you do want to find and work with influencers and you're not using a platform, then just use a Google Sheet to start with and start to build up some ideal influencers. So using appropriate hashtags which are relevant to your product range or target audience. And then ideally, this is going to appear in the discovery page, and that's what every influencer wants to be, is in the discovery, because that's, of course, when you get most traffic to your page. It's effectively on the how do you get on the front page of a newspaper, and that's what we would call the discovery page. So it's really important that you start to build up the type of people that you want, and their follower numbers and their name. What I would also do is go and scroll through their feed, have a look at the type of comments that they're getting, and you can actually look at their engagement rate, ideally by looking at the last 10 posts that they've got. So that will give you a bit of an average. Does the brand values sit with you? Would you? Because effectively what you're going to be doing is hiring this person to represent your brand. And do you feel comfortable with that? Forgetting just looking at the followers, this is about somebody that's going to represent you. And how have they represented other people, and what have they done? So let's just assume you've got 10 ideal people. Now, the first thing sometimes people do is they go and reach out straight away without any sort of thought, and they say, "Look, hi, this is who we are. Would you like? We'd like to work with you." Blah 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 blah, without any sort of forming of a relationship. And so, what I always suggest to people is they use the tickling the toes method, which effectively is commenting on that influencer's content, liking it. So when you then reach out, it's like, "Hello, John. I've been following you for a while. I love your content. I love the way you engage with your followers." So you're wooing them. You're making them feel valued already. "We've got an exciting new brand that we're looking to launch. We believe your values resonate with ours. We'd love to have a chat with you about a potential collaboration. Would you be interested in furthering this?" So you're not telling them about the campaign. You're just piquing their interest. And of course, once then you've reached out to them, what's really important is you have a proper brief, because it's the one thing that influencers hate, is that then, that they trying to interpret what you want. They don't want to be wasting their time. They want to be making sure that they deliver a successful campaign just as much as you do. So having a proper brief explaining what your company or brand or product is all about, the target audience, what you're trying to do. Don't always be so prescriptive either. So what they don't like, these are not employees, these are partners. That's a really important point to make. And they are content creators. So allow them to build that content with you together. So there's just a few little tips for you.
Definitely. So I think so. The first point that you told, that was kind of very informative. That is, we should not directly go on seeing the number of followers that they have, but then also going to the next step where we are able to see how much engagement that they are getting. Because if they are having a kind of good engagement, then definitely once they promote our brand, then we can expect that we can will be getting some benefit out of it. And the second part
Absolutely.
that you mentioned, when we connect with influencers, we ask them to promote the product in their tone rather than putting the marketing words into their mouth. So I think so. These two are very important points when we are looking for going with the influencer market.
Yeah. Now, obviously, explain to them perhaps whether or not this is a gifting campaign or it's a paid collaboration. Sometimes when you're starting out as a new company, as a brand, it's difficult because you don't have unlimited funds. But nevertheless, be clear about what it is you're trying to do. Now, I'm a great believer in paying influencers because these are individuals that are trying to run their own businesses. They have costs like anybody else. I always say to somebody, a free dress does not pay the rent. So, and it is the number one reason that motivates influencers being paid for. So why not offer a payment for a level of content? You will get far better engagement from somebody when you know you're paying for it. And the other thing I was just going to add to that is that you can pay for the rights to use that images as well, or videos that you could potentially use on your own social media, on your own website. How amazing would that be? So you've not just got photo, just stock images. You've got real, authentic people from influencers. One last thing to mention is what we call social media takeovers. So some influencers, many of them, are really, really good at building brands for themselves, their own brand. So why could they not do that for you? So what you could do is you could find a particular influencer that's in your niche and pay them for the period of the campaign to run your social media account.
What we have seen are generally a kind of B2C products. The influencers that keep on promoting, so they are mostly a kind of B2C product. So just wanted to understand that is influencer marketing limited or a kind of more focused towards B2C products, or it's also for B2B or a kind of high ticket businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I would still say the majority of influencer marketing is within the B2C sector. However, one of the fastest growing areas is in B2B because people are, and I think that has almost exploded over the last 12 months because of the pandemic, and people haven't been able to go out and see their customers or their prospects. So they've had to rely on other ways to create influence. And people have realized, wow, actually, if we run a webinar and we get these thought leaders from all around the world, which are now available from their living room, they can add massive value to our conference. Not only can we pay them to be part of this, but what we could also do is give them a discount code because they've got thousands of followers that they could bring to our conference. So that's definitely a major trend, is being able to use them. For example, in the reports that I have completed on the COVID impact report for Membership World and the Social CEO Index report, I am always using interviews from thought leaders. And the reason I'm doing that is because not only does it give credibility by association, but what it also does is that when I come to publish that, then I will tag those individuals within that. And of course, their audience will see that they are part of it. So, this is a very, very good way to, to sort of define your influence, because you are working with experts. And when you work with experts, what they do is they validate your research and give you social proof. So I think definitely B2B are growing. The other big growth in the B2C area is live stream shopping. And the Chinese in particular have taken the world by storm. I mean, some of these individuals are selling millions of sales revenue. I mean, there's a famous one called Becky Lai who sold 100 minis, the minis, in less than 5 minutes when she put a blog post out about this exclusive 100 minis in less than 5 minutes. You check it out online.
That's such a great example that you have shared. So in the beginning, you told that there are different type of influencers. There are kind of major and then micro and then few others. So what do you think for a brand will be a better strategy? Should they go for one campaign, one major influencer, or they should try with one campaign and many micro influencer?
Yes, this is a really good question, and it really does depend on a number of things. First of all, budget, because if you want to involve a major influencer, a mega one, it's going to cost you, thousands of dollars. If you are working, of course, with nano and micro influencers, it's going to cost you less. What the way I would probably define it is sometimes having a mega influencer can be the what I would call the flag waver for a campaign. It gets reach, it gets exposure on a massive scale, and that we shouldn't underestimate the value of what that does. And by the way, influencer marketing can work really well when it's coordinated with other forms of advertising. So it's part of a coordinated campaign. So I think sometimes people think, oh, well, we're just going to run an influencer marketing campaign, and that's fine. But sometimes it can work really well when it's aligned with a new product launch, and so there's lots of awareness and advertising everywhere at the same time, because it's just one marketing tactic at the end of the day. I would say that micro influencers are likely to get you a better engagement and potentially then attribute that back to sales of products. I mean, again, it depends on so many things. So it's reach and engagement really more than anything else. But if you're going to employ bigger influencers, you've got to have budget.
Definitely. So major point is focusing on your budget and focusing on the reach that you can get. And based on that, you can go with a kind of major influencer or plan with a kind of micro influencer.
That's true. Absolutely.
You mentioned that each influencer will be having a kind of their personalized link that they can share, and then we can collect the sales that we are getting. So, what are the other different parameters that we generally use to measure the success of an influencer marketing campaign? Let's say one is about sale, the second can be about brand, also kind of creating brand awareness.
Yeah, so obviously the most important thing is people want engagement. They want to know that the potential consumers are engaging with that influencers. So numbers of comments, numbers of likes, downloads to a website, downloads to an app, for example. App downloads are very popular with influencers, by the way. If you're running YouTube videos, you want to look at the number of views, but you also maybe want to look at the dwell time. So how long are people hanging around? Are they looking at the first part of it, or are they watching the whole video? Are they sharing content? So you can give different levels of engagement based upon the actions that the consumers are taking. You can look at the average comment per post. You can look at, and also the other thing is when you're looking at a number of influencers together, this is why it's great to run a campaign with a number of influencers. You can look at the attributes of all those people, and you're going to find that some of them are more popular with others, and it's all about figuring out why that is. Was it because of the type of content that individual did? Was it the language that he or she used in the post? Was it the time of day that it was posted? What were the types of comments? So there's one thing having a number of comments. There's another thing looking at the types of comments and the detail. Because what you don't want is just awesome, great, well done, look good. You know that's a bit, vanity type stuff. What you want is more deeper comments. And so I always ask for looking at sentiment as much as anything else. And then obviously you want to track people going to your website or landing page and joining up and doing something. Sometimes things like challenges and competitions are great engagement methods to bring people together, or by in traditional sales is reminding followers that something is running out. In other words, creating an urgency, or they have to do it by a certain time. So those are some of the things that you can look at overall, it is one of the other benefits of influencer marketing is you can tweak stuff. Once you've put a billboard advert out, it's there, it's gone, it's done. Whereas with an influencer campaign, you might decide to start with 10 influencers on the first round and the first week, see what sort of reaction you get from it, and maybe even tweak and change the brief before you then reach out to the second wave. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Can you just shortly share one or two case studies of influencer marketing that you can share with the audience?
Yeah. So there's a couple here. One is a lady called Tiana Wilson, who runs a YouTube, runs two YouTubes actually, with over 16 million followers. So she wanted to, she collaborated with a brand called The Social Store. And what they did is they created a whole range of merchandise and T-shirts for her. Bearing in mind, she's only 14, and yet she has over 16 million subscribers rather, on YouTube. So what they decided to do was to have a pop-up store in Bradford in the United Kingdom shopping centre. And honestly, it was unbelievable. 20,000 people came to this pop-up store in just 2 days. She was selling a product every 20 seconds between £20 and 344. The exposure that was created for this was absolutely phenomenal. Some people were queuing for 5 hours just to wait to see her, such as that. I mean, you wouldn't, people of our age wouldn't know who she is, but among her
Amazing.
core demographic audience, they absolutely love her. So that was one great campaign of actually really showing value and connection. The second one is with a agency called Brave Bison, and they were approached by the Internet Watch Foundation and Marie Curie, and they had a bit of a problem. They had a very sensitive subject that they needed to address, which was all around indecent images online. So how could they create a lot of awareness about this? Because people don't talk about some of these things, yeah? So they approached Brave Bison and they found two influencers. One was a guy called Aaron Krasnell, and then another guy was called Eman, who's a Arsenal football player. And what they decided to do was to create some content that were what we call mishap photos. So Aaron, who's a bit of a prankster, went down to the gym and was using some weights to lift up, except there was a mirror behind him and there was two people either side holding these weights, which we, the viewer, could see. So of course people were saying, oh, what a second, that's not right, you're pulling the wool over our eyes. So he's getting a lot of this stuff. And then Aaron, who was a football player, was wearing the Arsenal shirt, but he was wearing Tottenham Hotspur socks. And for those of you that don't know, those are bitter rival football teams in North London. So of course you can imagine the level of response he got. So what are you doing? Sell out, blah, 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 blah. Loads of people engaging.
Definitely.
Anyway, the next day they posted something that said, you may have seen what we were doing. The reason for doing this is because if something doesn't look right, then it probably isn't. And we're running a campaign with the Internet Watch Foundation. So if you see something online that isn't right, please report it to the Internet Watch Foundation. I mean, how cool is that? Well, the responses were, they had 8.5 million user impressions, 5.4 million of that on Instagram alone. And bearing in mind, I told you that the average engagement rate on Instagram is 1.67%. They achieved 6.9% engagement. So a hugely successful campaign.
Thank you for sharing this amazing case studies. I think so definitely that will motivate the audience to go and to try for influencer marketing. Any last piece of advice that you'd be giving for both for the influencers also and also for the brands who want or who still are into the initial phases of trying the influencer marketing?
Yeah, so I guess I've shared some of it already, but it's about authenticity for me. It's about try and treat and work with influencers as friends and partners. These are, the best. There's a reason why in the influencer world we talk about collaboration, because that's exactly what it is. How can we together help build your audience, bring value to your audience, and promote my brand, almost like in unison? What would your followers like to see? Not how can I sell to you, but what would your followers like to see? Do you see what I mean? It's a different type of approach. It's almost like seeing the influencer as a conveyor belt rather than a stop point. So it's much, much more about how that can work. I think, trust these individuals to tell your brand story in their way, that even if it's quite different, these are experts at brand storytelling. So they can see things potentially in your brand that you may never have seen before. And be brave and have a go.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your advice. So, with this, we have come to the end of today's episode. It was pleasure having you, Gordon, and learn about the potential of influencer marketing. Definitely, you have highlighted a good amount of points that will encourage the brands to go to try for the influencer marketing and also for the individuals to understand the potential that they have or how they can utilize their potential to make their mark into this industry. Thank you so much and looking forward to host you again.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.